What's next for transportation energy? On today's episode, a conversation about the future of electric vehicles with Karl Doenges, Executive Director of the Transportation Energy Institute's Charging Analytics Program, and Mike Murphy, CEO of EV Politics and co-director of the Center for the Political Future at the University of Southern California.
The climate has changed, and I would say, and is in a constant state of flux. But it sure seems that you get one narrative that's in the media, and then one narrative that, if you look at the hard data, is actually something a little different. And there's a lot of noise, but there's a lot of undercurrents going on right now in the EV world. And I know you kind of have hung your hat on being the expert and really breaking down the analysis of EVs and the adoption rates and where it is from a political issue of blue states versus red states. And it sure seems to me, when you peel back some layers and start looking at data, it's starting to get really weird, and there's starting to be some crossover, and what is being reported in the media is really not what's going on both sides of the aisle. And I just want to get your perspective on this and hear what you have to take. I think these are very interesting times.
Yeah, I think that's it. Interesting times. So you're right about the data. I would say the biggest thing is how resilient the move to EVs has been. Despite the media coverage, the media tends to cover the short-term bumps. They don't look at the long-term trends. And the trend is electrification is growing in different places in different ways, but it's growing. The question is always changes in the speed of the growth. In fleets and everything, the economics are getting so good. That seems to be particularly in, fleet owners that run a route 90 miles a day, something like that. The ROI is pretty good. So that seems to be marching forward. Ask anybody at Ford Pro about that. And they've seen a real increase. Customers try it. They like it. Then they roll it out more because the fuel savings really, that helps their bottom line. In the consumer world, it's a little murkier now. It's going up, but there are two big factors that I think are going to play a lot in the next couple of months. One of them is, are the subsidies going to stick around or not through the rest of the year in Congress? We saw in Germany when the subsidies went away, and the consumer market, they had about a 27% decline. I think we would have at least a flattening out and maybe a decline here if we lost particularly the lease subsidy, but also some of the ownership subsidies. Now, that's an interesting debate in Congress. There are about 21 members now in a letter saying don't slash the, IRA to pieces. And, it's a very tight house. I mean, the leadership's going to have to get everybody on board, including some members that have manufacturing facilities in their district. And it's kind of hard to get the congressman to close a plant with 2,000 employees in their district if they ever want to come back. So, it's murky now in the consumer subsidies. It looks a little grim, but I think this fight's going to go on all summer. I don't think they're going to get the budget stuff done till the last deadlines, and they're creeping up in August and beyond. So that is a work in progress on the subsidy side. And
Can I
then
ask you a
finally,
question about that?
there's the partisanship. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, just on the subsidy part that you just touched on, it seems that there seems to be, and I want to get your perspective, it seems there's a disconnect that people think things are going to happen so easily and so fast. And I try to explain to people, government's designed to move slowly.
Right.
We have a system of checks and balances, and within that, you've got just within the IRA, you've got some that's block funding, some that's discretionary, the CFI. It's not as plain and simple, but all the courts where this is going to get challenged, and it all will be challenged if moves are made, which I agree with you. There's some rumblings that they may not even challenge all of it because it affects their home base. But the parts that are challenged, they have to go to the district courts in D.C. And those are not the most friendliest courts. This is not going to be cut and dry. And
I totally agree.
I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, and the Trump administration has decided to really flex the powers of the presidency into new areas, and it's all going to be tested in the judiciary. The judiciary is like lava. It moves slow, but it's hard to stop. So, I think in the subsidy space, very hard to put a past congressional appropriation back in the bottle. The way, as you well know, Karl, the way our system works is Congress appropriates the money, and the executive branch kind of figures out how to spend it. But that doesn't mean they can stop it all. So you're right. There's that. I mean, I still think there are 700 to 800 charging stations in the pipeline now that over time will be hard to stop. They can slow them down. Now, will they get up to 1,500 or max it out? Maybe not. We'll see. This is part of the kind of yo-yo on EV policy we've had to endure. But a lot of the stuff in the pipeline is unstoppable. What Congress can do is get into the consumer subsidies because that's going forward money, most of it. But again, only a handful of votes. And we've done a little thing at evpolitics.org. We took a look at the spending on new factories and EV jobs and investment with help from Atlas Policy, the great folks there. And we found the top 35 districts for EV investment represent over 160,000 good jobs. And of those 35 districts, only 7 are Democratic. The rest are Republican, many in red states. So there's going to be a lot of cross pressure on some of those Republican congressmen who may say, oh, I don't like EVs, I don't like subsidies, but I sure like this new factory I'm getting for $12 billion here and the 3,000, 8,000, whatever thousand jobs. So we're in for a battle on that. But if they, there's a lot of talk too about let's fade out the subsidies, don't go cold turkey, which is, a pretty smart political solution because it allows the president to save face while not putting a shock on the system that will close some of those factories. So you might see a deal like that. Bottom line is if we go cold turkey on subsidies, I think we're going to see EV sales decline, go negative for probably the first time in the last 7 or 8 years, but maybe not that much. And I think they'll recover because the macro trends are the same. And as you said on the IRA stuff and the NEVI program and a lot of the infrastructure spend, there are obstacles that can slow it down, but the appropriated money is the appropriated money.
Yeah.
And
I think I want to highlight something you said that gets misquoted a lot is when you've said this, several other people have said this, we've said this on our podcast. If the subsidies were to cut cold turkey, it would be an impact on sales, but that doesn't mean the sales reverse. It just means the growth rate slows and abates. Damper. Because I've been out there and I've said that, and then that was communicated as, oh, it's going to reverse and it's going to stop. And it's like, no.
Yeah,
right
it's too big
now,
to
with
stop.
all this negative sentiment, it's still growing. It's just that the growth rate fluctuates.
And the other thing is there's so much more product in the pipeline now. The traditional ice makers have caught up. And, because of the partisan divide over EVs, Elon, we just did this polling project where we polled car buyers about Elon Musk. And if you voted for Trump, you love him. If you voted for Harris, you don't like him. If you say you're thinking seriously about buying an EV in the next year or so, which is about 18 to 20% of our definition of the car market, Elon's quite unpopular, and other brands are far more popular than Tesla. Now those other brands actually have product. They have choices. You can walk into a Honda dealership and buy an EV SUV. Strong, you've also got prices going down, and good lease deals. So the EV marketplace is becoming more attractive. We also know that word of mouth really helps, and we have a lot of EVs that were leased going into the used market now at low competitive, what we'd say in the auto business, conquest pricing to grab new people. And so the word of mouth will only get better. We still have a lot of work to do, particularly in charging, particularly in multifamily level 2. Great opportunities there. A lot of pent-up demand among apartment and condo people who want EVs, but we need a charging solution. So, the macro trends are pretty good, but we could hit a speed bump now. And the last factor quickly is, President Trump was selling Teslas on the lawn of the White House. Now, that's breaking some precedent I don't like. But we know the red wall, Republican consumer resistance to EVs on ideological reasons. If Trump can help break that down, it's good for electrification.
Let me ask you about that.
We'll know in a few quarters if that happened or not.
Yeah, you bring up, so I'm going to preface this. I'm going to follow up on that and get some more detail out of you. But I want to preface it by saying we started TEI with a 10-year projection of what was going to happen in transportation energy. And then 10 years after that, we went back and looked at how bad we got it wrong. And, the second you make a projection, it's outdated and it's wrong. Things are so in flux. But what we did is when we did the analysis, we looked back and there was these big unexpected events that changed the course of things. Volkswagen Dieselgate, which not only really put a ding in the coffer of ICE vehicles, but then caused a massive amount of flood of money through the penalty program to go into EV charging. And then you had all these people projecting the growth of EVs at a nice slow pace. And then the Model 3 came along, and that just blew down the barriers and changed everything. And you saw a hockey stick, and it just took on. Is the moment with Trump, and then I guess you got Sean Hannity jumping on the bandwagon and everything else.
He's a Tesla
all
driver
of them
now.
Buying Teslas, combined with the fact that something you just said that's critically important, trucks and SUVs now are models that were not available really in great number.
Right.
And those are now available. So you've got the red states who, the leadership of the conservative side or the more populist Trump side is really endorsing it. Combined with, I would say, this is my part of the question, demographically, they prefer the larger SUVs and the trucks. Those models are now starting to come available. Does this create that wave that creates an inflection point, and it's just something that no one could have predicted?
Yeah, I agree, unpredictable. In the short term, it's a nightmare for Tesla because their customer base has not been, Republicans buy Teslas. I get emails from them all the time. But in the data, Democrats have been buying EVs over the last 2 years at a rate about 4 times as high as Republicans. But now you have Trump giving a little permission. So, we're going to see if that helps Tesla offset the sales they're definitely losing with others. And we need a few, months to find out. But I'll tell you, we did a poll after the election, and there was one interesting Republican finding in it. 2 years ago in 2003, in November, we asked on our poll, agree or disagree with a couple of statements. And one of the statements was, agree or disagree with this, voter/car buyer. EVs are for people who see the world differently than I do. Big cultural thing. 58% of Republicans agreed with that, and about 35 disagreed. Not a good number. It showed the kind of baggage EVs had. After the election, it was 52-48, 4-point difference. It used to be like a 16-point difference. So we had a 12-point closing in that. And I think Elon, Mr. EV becoming Mr. MAGA, sent an early signal to Republicans that maybe EVs are okay. And now you've got Trump doubling down, and you got prices. You can go pick up a used Tesla cheap if you're a Republican for a second car or something. So we need a couple of quarters of registration data. I do know in January, the S&P Global Mobility data on cars and trucks and SUVs showed Tesla down 11%, non-Tesla brands up 44%. Part of that overall trend, as you said, more product, more. You can get a three-row SUV now. You can get a big-ass Cadillac electric Escalade if you want. They look pretty good. The long-term trends are really good. Now, as somebody who's very worried about the Chinese conquesting our market, I do hate to see Team USA having circular firing squads on EVs. Because, anybody who runs an auto company will tell you that the electrification trend is worldwide and unstoppable. We need to have a strong domestic EV market here to let the people who build cars here, be either the Germans, Detroit, the South Koreans, the Japanese, to get great at EVs, because island America will not work in a world car market. We'll wilt and die. So when we have policy that's anti-EV for stupid reasons, it does create headwinds. It's an unfortunate thing, because it's not about political dogma. It's about American manufacturing-based national security and, being part of the future of the world auto industry.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. When it gets to, politics, the original push behind EVs, and you touched on this already, was a big environmental push. And that kind of morphed into, the disruption of EVs it's the electric drivetrain. It's all this, it's cleaner, it's better. There is some performance advantages. But when you peel back the layer and you talk to executives at the big three that truly deal with EVs on a daily basis, the executives at Tesla and Rivian, they're very quick to say, oh no, that's just one component of it. And that it's a software game. And that you can do software performance and upgrades with over-the-air software upgrades in an EV that just because of the system architecture, you cannot do in internal combustion engines. And it enables services, embedded AI, full self-driving, or the autopilot, or whatever you want to call it, which can either be the car's driving for you, or it's just a really hell of an ADAS system. And then all the way into retail integration into the vehicle, all those things that you have to have that software to be able to do it. And it's these amenities that people want, and that's a bipartisan issue. And the consumer hasn't awakened to these capability sets yet, and that's going to be a big driver. Do you hear anything about that side of it?
Yeah, no, it is. And this is where the Chinese have the lead and where we have to catch up. And we're equipped to catch up. We're good at software in the US. Yeah, you're totally right, Carl. The cars have changed. In the old days, your car had 20 really dumb little computers in it. One was working on the anti-lock brakes. Yep. One was working on engine control to try to squeeze a little more gas mileage. One was running your Apple CarPlay interface, but they didn't talk to each other. Now the idea is you have one central computing core that controls all the functions of the car. And the advantage is by updating that software, you de facto update all the hardware. The suspension changes, it retunes, et cetera, et cetera. The batteries can last longer, more range. So that has been hard for the traditional people, both in Germany and the US and in Asia, to do, because these are companies that have the best mechanical engineers in the world. But now they need the best software engineers in the world. And that was the big idea of Tesla. Their mechanical engineering was not always so great. Their interior quality, a lot of the mass manufacturing stuff that the traditionals are good at, they weren't so good at. But the idea of central software, which Rivian, Lucid, Tesla, that has now infected it. But that's a very hard transition. But one, they have to do it. Two, they are getting better. And you're going to see more deals like Volkswagen, which has blown millions trying to get software right, finally bought it from Rivian.
Yeah.
And it's a double win. Rivian gets billions they need to scale, and Volkswagen solves their software problem down the road. The other thing that I think, and this actually started with GM a million years ago with OnStar, when they said, hey, why don't we put another cell phone chip in the car, and we can charge people to push a button and have a speakerphone to talk to somebody to help them. That was a very profitable invention at GM. And now that has grown to software services you can upsell people in the car. Like Ford, Blue Cruise is an excellent ADAS, and you can kind of buy it with an over-the-air update on a lot of those cars. So the over-the-air update allows you to sell things too. And software is all profit. You get the $8.99 a month from somebody to have a new attribute. You're collecting that forever. It's like a cable subscription. So it's a new financial model for the car folks, which is a huge incentive to get software right. And it is getting a lot better. And I think you're going to see, in the next 36 months, a big leap forward, not only in battery tech, more range, faster charging, but in what the car can do and how the car maker will make money with a happy consumer getting more services at a pretty reasonable cost. I mean, $5 a month to have your car do something really new and really great, that's an affordable thing. And you don't have to take it to the dealer for $3 and have something rebuilt. You don't have to go buy a new car. So yeah, we're in a revolutionary time in the automotive industry, which is extremely exciting. The only problem we have is politics gumming it up with grievance and tariffs and this ridiculous knee-jerk hostility to EVs, when the fact is EVs are the survival and the prosperity path going forward. And I should add one more thing we kind of skipped because I think it's really in your wheelhouse. The other thing that's getting better is the charging tech. We're now finding charging solutions that are great for gas stations and convenience stores. The battery boosted stuff like Electric Era or ADS Tech from Germany, where if you're running your convenience store and you want to put in EV charging, because who doesn't want somebody parked for 20 minutes buying the high margin stuff in the store, but the power company tells you it's $1 million in 5 years to put in the power. What these things do is take advantage of the cheaper cost of batteries, which are declining quickly, to put a battery boost system in. Think of it as like 3 refrigerators, outdoor in a place. And at night, they can buy the cheaper power from the power company, and they don't need the super expensive tie-in And you can still do, sell 60, 70 people a charge during the day and up your retail sales. It's a much better solution, I think, for the average convenience store or gas station. And the footprint can be smaller too. And so that's new tech, and it's catching on quickly. And I think that'll really change the fast charging world.
Well, and there's a secondary benefit to that that a lot of people don't realize. If you look at the areas of the United States that are heaviest in convenience stores, that's the South and Southeast, otherwise
Right.
known as Hurricane Alley. And when you've got that battery system backing up your charging, which by the way eliminates or seriously diminishes the demand charges, which is the economic killer for a
Which
lot
kills
of
you.
these
Yeah.
stations.
Right.
Yeah, you address that, but you also have now a huge battery backup system,
Yeah.
and
Save your freezer. Yeah.
that's a lot of product, and if it gets out of temperature spec, you got to throw it all away. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of brownouts, a lot of blackouts, especially during hurricane season. But the other thing people don't realize is the forecourt gasoline diesel runs on electricity. And if you've
Right.
got that backup battery power, you can still make sure emergency operators, police, and others have access to the diesel and gasoline during times of emergency.
Right. You can run your
There's-
pumps. Right. Right.
Yeah,
That's
but
very smart. I hadn't thought of that.
I want to shift to something you said. You talked about the cost decline on batteries, and it gets to something I think I see, and I want to get your take on it. It gets into the political issue of we talk a lot about, well, a lot of these manufacturing plants for EVs are in red states, but there's something else that's even more core to the EV than just the body and the chassis, and that's the battery pack. And they're building very large battery manufacturing plants also in red states. And what people fail to realize is the batteries are so much more important than just EVs. With all the data centers, because of AI coming online, and the power production in the United States and distribution is not keeping in pace, the easiest solution is to drop these monster battery systems at a power plant to use it as peak shaving and things like that, and to be able to handle
Right.
these increased power loads, especially during peak times. And this is something that it's the only solution, because you just can't build a monster
No,
coal-fired
people
power
don't
plant.
understand. We have two grids, the day grid and the night grid. And so the night grid is full of power. Wind still works at night, power plants, a lot of powers. In some places, they pay you to take it. And during the day, there's not enough power. So batteries are a time machine that allows your night power to be used during the day. And you got one in your car. And that's why a lot of the, GM Energy, others, Tesla, are working on deals where it doesn't only charge your car with cheap night power and give you a backup in your house without all the generator stuff. It also can let that car battery at night or in an emergency be your house battery and power your house. So you're right. As batteries become cheaper, they're critical to the grid, and battery capacity in the grid is growing exponentially. And it's a big part of the solution. I couldn't agree more.
The battery energy storage systems will cause more scaling in battery manufacturing than EVs, and that will drive down the cost of batteries. And the largest cost component of an EV is the batteries. The battery manufacturing plants are critical for AI and for other things, and they're being put in a lot of red states. That is something else that's just not being discussed a lot.
And it's a national security issue. We've got to domestically source high-tech batteries. Look, you do these battery symposiums, you look in the back, and there are a couple of guys in ill-fitting suits, because they're all generals from the Pentagon who had to bust out the civilian clothes not to scare anybody. But you want weapons on Jeep platforms that can knock down a drone, which is the big revolution and massive power consumption. You need really powerful portable batteries for them. Battery tech, and the Chinese lead now. We can catch them, and some areas of it we're ahead. Recycling, reusing critical minerals, so we don't have that chokehold. But yeah, all this stuff has a national security base. Let me give you my favorite statistic. I did this at SAE, and I always watch the faces, and see, and this was a shocker, and the engineers got it. Before World War II, in the mid to late 1930s, total car production in the British Empire was about 550,000 cars and light trucks. In France, it was about 400,000. In Germany, about 450,000 on the eve of World War II. In 1940 in the US, the year before we got involved in World War II, American car and light vehicle production was 4.7 million vehicles. So, from a national security point of view, if you have the ability to create a lot of vehicles and convert that to other manufacturing, it is a very important thing. And, when we poll Republicans, I'm sad to say 1/3 of Republicans who tend to be hostile to EVs, we'll see if that changes, but 1/3 of them think the US is the number one car producer in the world. Another third think we're number 2 to Japan. Nobody knows China makes 3 times as many cars as we do. And so that trend, it could soon be 6 times as many cars as we do. That is a bad trend for national security. And the way out of it is EVs and PHEVs and these new cars that sell worldwide. So there you go. That's the real political issue that we got to get the squabble away from and understand why electrification is not some esoteric thing or, silly hippie mobiles. They're fast, they're fun to drive. Most people spend a lot of money on gas. You get a better deal on that. And they're very important to American industry.
They are.
And people can find all our polling at evpolitics.org. They can also go to usevjobs.org, where we have a great tool we're launching where you type in your zip code, you see how many EV jobs are in your congressional district, and you push a button to email your congressman that maybe we shouldn't pull the rug out from under them. So all that stuff's coming. You can check it out online.
Mike, I can't thank you enough. We really appreciate it every time you come on board with us.
Anything I can do. We have new hats, American EV Jobs Alliance, so I'll send you one.
I appreciate it. You take care.
What's Next for Transportation Energy is a production of the Transportation Energy Institute. Find out more about us at transportationenergy.org.